went to the 2024 Melbourne International Film Festival and saw 78 films, many of which are already available in other countries, so you might have seen them too. Here's a list of their films that I managed to see before going, and here's a list of their retro screenings that I'd already seen. I'm going to count down all 78 films in my reverse order of preference, starting with East of Noon, a fable set in a heightened world, a satire of autocracy and rebellious youth. Felt a bit high school devised theatre to me, but the whole style of it is not really my thing. A Traveller's Needs is the latest improvised mumblecore from Hong Sang-soo, featuring a French teacher in Korea chatting to her students about poetry in their country. It's fine, but this is my 7th one of these, and they have well and truly lost their charm on me. She Left Blossoms More is a weird sci-fi where 3 brothers convert their mother's closet into a time machine hoping to bring her back to life. It's very trippy, with plenty of outlandish moments, but not very cohesive. The Village Next to Paradise is a slice of life for a found family in a Somali village. It's an alright drama, but the dialogue readings are deliriously slow-paced, and it really put me off. Cinta de Campo is 2 stories, one about a lady moving to the city and working as a cleaner after losing her farm in the flood, and the other is about a woman that moves from the city to her dad's farm after he passes away. The first has a real sweet lead performance. The second slowly falls into a sort of supernatural story from the director of Good Manners, which I really liked, but this one didn't connect. All Dirt Road's Taste of Salt follows the lives of sisters growing up in rural Mississippi. There's enough threads of narrative there to decipher, but it's more cinema as poetry, and though it's very pretty, the form doesn't really register much to me. Suspended Time is a COVID lockdown film with 2 brothers staying in the country house of their childhood with their respective partners. One's a film director and the other's a rock music podcaster, so the whole film is filled with insufferable debates about art and culture. The Mugai is an Australian First Nations horror film dealing with repercussions of the stolen generation and features an entity that kidnaps children. Nice performances and emotional underpinnings, but fell flat as a horror. I thought the short film version was more effective. All We Imagine as Light follows 2 unlucky-in-love nurses living as flatmates in Mumbai. A moody slice of life with some nice drama, but not really for me. The Demon Disorder is a Cronenbergian take on a fairly typical family drama subject. It's a little clunky overall, a little too overt for my taste, but I can't deny it delivered some fun practical effects in the 3rd act. Vulcanizadora is a new Joel Petrakis film, so expect some jet black comedy. 2 loser friends head to the woods with a dire plan to change their lives. It's super sparse, but has heart too. The pathos felt unearned to me, but I got some good laughs out of it. Pigsy is a weird mix of Journey to the West narrative set in a Blade Runner dystopian future, with some typical shrill Chinese kids animation vibes. It didn't do much for me and the songs were horrific, but it had some really nice designs. Some Rain Must Fall is a character study of a Chinese housewife with such seething bitter resentment and anger bubbling under the surface. It's kind of punishing in how bleak it is, and the pacing was soporific, but it was straightforward and not too long. The Sparrow in the Chimney is a tricky one because I'll be honest, I didn't follow it 100%. A family gathers in their childhood home for a birthday party and past resentments and troubles bubble to the surface. It's a nice awkward dinner party kind of film, but I think it takes a sort of supernatural turn in the last half that's certainly intriguing, but also quite ambiguous. Who Do I Belong To is about a mother struggling to reconcile her love for her sons with their dark choices. This one took a left turn, and I gotta say, it didn't add up to much for me, but there's nice performances, and it's certainly well shot. Close Your Eyes is a mystery where a film director is prompted by a true crime TV show to renew the search for his best friend, a famous actor who went missing 20 years ago halfway through a production. Unarchiving the footage from the unfinished film leads to an unexpected journey, with great performances and solid themes. It's great stuff, but I found it a bit ponderous. Moving is the only retro screening I saw this year, a Japanese film from 1993 about a young girl struggling to process her parents' divorce. As much as I enjoyed it, I found it to be a bit unfocused and really drawn out, but it's a classic for a reason, so I'm probably just wrong as usual. Blue Sun Palace is a nicely realised slice of life examining the strange relationship that forms between mutual acquaintances of Chinese immigrants living in New York. It's full of quiet grief and well performed, but for the most part the languid pacing wasn't for me. The Damned follows Civil War soldiers sent on an expedition scouting up north. It's kind of contemplative, very naturalistic with some amazing scenery, a little bit of action but mainly soldiers trying to survive an inhospitable wilderness and reckon with the reasons why they are fighting. Renas is set in 90s Peru, where an absentee father is asked to sign travel documents so his 2 daughters can leave the country, and in the process reconnects with them. A nice little family drama and a snapshot of a time and place. In The Rye Horn, a woman acting as a midwife in a small village gets her life upturned by a small favour and has to survive a trek through the jungle to escape the country, meeting various people that help and hinder along the way. It's like a stream of consciousness tale of poetic justice. Magic Beach is an animated anthology based on a famous Australian children's book with live-action wraparound segments where various children that read the book imagine different fun and surreal scenarios. It's episodic and very cute. Normal is a fairly standard coming-of-age story about a 14-year-old girl taking care of her dad who has MS and trying to hide that from social workers. There's a cute high school crush subplot in there too. Runt is a locally shot adaptation of a kid's book, a literal underdog story about a precocious girl that adopts a stray dog and tries to save the farm by entering him in dog shows. It's broad and cartoonish and pretty fun. In Vitro is an Aussie sci-fi horror drama following a protagonist trying to reconcile her feelings towards her long-term partner. Red flags galore. Glad I saw this early and didn't have the main premise spoiled, because once you do figure out what's going on, it's easy to get ahead of, but it's got some nice performances and landscapes. The Organist is a dark comedy of cannibalistic corporate culture and the weird self-justifications we make on moral values to live with our choices. It's a little rough around the edges, but keeps up a quick pace and has some nice performances and banter. Wake Up sees teen environmental activists trapped in a store overnight with a psychotic security guard. The latest from film collective Roadkill Superstar questions credibility at every turn, but has just enough fun moments and gore, plus one unique, visually striking sequence to really pull you through. The Concierge is a cutesy glorification of Japanese work culture where a young woman starts work at a department store for animals. It felt like the first 5 episodes of an anime series, but as episodic as it is, it has its charming moments. Lee is a solid biopic of a World War II photojournalist with a great cast and nice production values. The gotcha ending was a little baffling, but the meat of it works fine, and the story of how a 30s fashion model ended up documenting the Holocaust was quite interesting. Malou is a biopic of 3 generations of stubborn and slightly hot-headed women in a rundown house in Rio. Does feel very much like a play, and I don't know if that's just because 2 of the characters are actresses, so they are just very theatrical and dramatic, but it's got great performances. All Shall Be Well shows a family falling apart when the inheritance process is followed in a country that does not legally recognise same-sex partnerships. Sad and frustrating, with a simple and clear message told with touching performances. We Were Dangerous follows delinquent girls in 1950s New Zealand shipped off to a small island functioning as a Catholic reform school. It's an enjoyable feminist rebellion coming-of-age story until a turn plunges it into dark drama territory, making the tone feel really uneven. Still, an interesting watch. Crossing is an odd couple road trip through Istanbul as a Georgian woman searches for her trans niece, aided by a plucky young man. I adored And Then We Danced, and this follow-up film is a little more laid back and meandering, but still manages to pull you in with these characters and similarly nails the ending. My Sunshine reminded me of Billy Elliot, but with figure skating, and way more bittersweet and poetic. I was blindsided with the direction that The Prejudice came in that caused the main conflict for the film, and it's far more nuanced in how it's set up and plays out, which leads to some quietly devastating moments. Megalopolis is... Megalopolis. Oh boy. Francis Ford Coppola's glorious mess of a passion project feels like a 1950s biblical epic, but with politics substituting religion, performed by vaudevillians going as big as possible with the aesthetics of a neo-noir. It's all over the place, and seems to be simultaneously the worst and the best. It's pretentious and baffling, and I had the best time watching it on the gigantic IMAX screen, and yes, there was a live performance interacting with the film at our screening. Insanity. Sing Sing is a look inside the arts program in a New York prison used as a method of rehabilitation, an engaging and emotional subject with many real-life participants playing themselves. The show they devised within the film just reminded me of Hamlet 2, so I might have struggled to take it seriously because I couldn't get that comparison out of my head, but it's a good watch. Julie Keeps Quiet is about an up-and-coming tennis star that remains curiously silent during an inquiry into the misconduct of one of the club's coaches. You can read between the lines and figure out what it's doing very easily, and there's not much more to it than that, but the pace and length just make you sit in that uncomfortable space. Good stuff. Universal Language is an offbeat and idiosyncratic comedy set in some Farsi-speaking version of Winnipeg. Amusing and with a nice style and interesting ideas, though I did find it thinned out a bit towards the end. Sweet Dreams is the weird and kooky story of the succession of a Dutch plantation when the patriarch dies, which gets complicated by estranged family and discontent native workers on strike. Wryly comedic and with a strange, bemused tone, but an enjoyable watch. The Balconettes is one of those hide the dead body farces that I thought we had done away with, but I guess they're still around. This one kind of avoids being problematic by making some wild pivots in tone, where what started as a Rear Window-ish rom-com ends up being a rape revenge drama with supernatural trauma elements. It's a fun watch, but more than a little messy. Motel Destino is a colourful little erotic crime thriller where a botched job leads a man to hide out and get a job working in a sex motel where an unstable relationship between the husband and wife owners is formed. A bit of a slow burn drama for the most part, but it has some fun pulpy moments in the third act. Good One follows a teenager going on a hike with her dad and his friend, and having to arbitrate and contend with their egos. It's a nice little dramedy with some beautiful locations and well-observed little natural interactions. Perhaps a little slight for my taste, but it's got a satisfying dramatic arc in the third act. The Most Precious of Cargoes is an animated drama where a woodcutter's wife finds a baby thrown from a train to the German death camps and decides to raise it as her own. There's some harsh Holocaust imagery in here which doesn't really sit well with the whimsical direction and music, so it comes off a bit feeling kind of tried and Oscar baity to me, but it's got some interesting animation styles. In Bookworm, an estranged father and daughter go on a grand adventure in New Zealand's wilderness, searching for a mysterious creature. A fun family movie is not what I expected as the follow-up to Come to Daddy, but despite that change of tone, it's equally as offbeat and charming. Ghost Cat Anzu is an anime where a girl is dropped off in her dad's childhood country home for the summer holidays while he hides from loan sharks, and she's taken care of by a grandpa and an anthropomorphic cat that befriends a bunch of random spirits and helps her get over the grief of her mother's death. Like a crass teen version of Totoro. Typical anime stuff, really. Toll is a darkly comedic crime thriller from Brazil. It's got a gay conversion camp coming-of-age drama mixed in with what ends up being a sly story of poetic justice, which is kind of subdued overall, but with a biting end that I liked very much. Sunlight is Nina Conti's featured debut, a delightful odd couple road trip with great heart and humour where a suicidal man and a woman afraid to leave her monkey costume form an unlikely friendship. It's great fun. La Cocina follows a chaotic day behind the scenes of a restaurant in Times Square that employs many undocumented immigrant workers, all dreaming of a better life. Has a real strange tone, changing ratios and using black and white and colour in very specific ways, with an incredible centerpiece one-shot that was a standout for me. The Outrun is about a young biologist struggling with sobriety that returns to her home in an attempt to stay clean and figure out her life. It's the follow-up to the great film System Crasher, and kind of like that film, this one has many dizzying and manic sequences and a nice loud soundtrack and a great lead performance too. The story of Solomon is like if the Safdie brothers made a film about an asylum seeker Uber food delivery man in France. I thoroughly hated every minute of it in the best way possible. Very stressful. However, it slows down in the final act where there is a pretty inevitable dramatic conclusion. Still, overall, it's an impressive effort. Memory is a sort of sweet New York romance with some real dark dramatic undertones where a recovering alcoholic crosses paths with a man with early onset dementia. Thematically coherent and great performances. Was nice to see Jessica Harper again too. To a Land Unknown follows two Palestinian refugees living on the streets of Athens trying to scam their way to Germany in increasingly desperate and dangerous ways. Like a train wreck in slow motion, things don't start out great and roll steadily downhill from there. Some nice tense drama and lead performances. Dying follows intertwined stories of a mother, son, and daughter all facing various guises of death. With the chapter headings, it felt almost like a dark satirical anthology, with the standout moment being a wonderfully awkward dinner table conversation. It's just over 3 hours long too, but I didn't mind that because it managed to hold my interest. Black Dog is an outsider in his dog narrative against the backdrop of a decaying rural Chinese town. A man returns from jail and is put on a task force to rid the town of stray dogs, but ends up befriending one as they both struggle to fit in. Some incredible compositing and panning shots. This one has a nice melancholic tone too. In the Iranian film My Favorite Cake, a lonely 70-year-old woman decides to start dating again, leading to adorable and unpredictable consequences. There's a Before Sunset style centerpiece meet cute that had the audience swooning, but still manages to have a political bite by the end. Great to see with the crowd. A Brief History of My Family is a delicious slow burn thriller where a teenager seizes an opportunity to ingrain himself in the lives of a wealthy family. It simmers along nicely thanks to some good direction, performances, and minimalist electronic grunge score. I would have liked a bigger payoff, but it's a solid little brooding dark drama. Armand is a really tense dark drama where a primary school teacher tries to arbitrate between parents of children in a bullying incident that crossed lines, and the meeting just escalates. It reminded me a little of a contained version of The Hunt. Incredible performances, and if it wasn't for those bizarre, surreal contemporary dance interludes that I deeply despised, this one would have been a top favourite. Flow is a dialogue-free animation about a cat that has to learn to get along with others after a flood engulfs the world. It's adventurous and contemplative and has a beautiful art style and feels very much like an indie video game. A fun watch. Behind the Mountains is an odd one, but I really liked it. A man has a breakdown and goes to prison, comes out 4 years later and kidnaps his son out of school to take him to the mountains and try and prove something. It eventually turns into a kind of tense home invasion drama, but it's bookended by a strangely sweet and slightly fantastical story that can be read a number of ways, but I found it to be quite beautiful and sad. Best to go in knowing nothing. Matt and Mara is an improv mumblecore take on When Harry Met Sally, where two old friends start getting closer and complicating their relationship. The vibes feel very Richard Linklater, and the naturalistic performances sell these sometimes prickly characters. Rumours is the new Guy Maddin film where world leaders at the G7 summit attempt to draft a preliminary statement about the current global crisis. Absurdist political satire that alternates from being hilarious to utterly bizarre. Got a bit played out towards the end there for me, but still an amusing watch with a really fun ensemble cast. September Says has my single favourite moment in any of the films this year. It's an odd story of a really toxic relationship between sisters. While it may not be too difficult to get ahead of, it still delivers some jolts with its idiosyncratic style and the super dark, unpredictable nature of the lead characters. Really weird and really creepy. The Shrouds is David Cronenberg's reaction to the passing of his wife, and it's a doozy. This feels like satire to me, and what Crash did for car injuries, this will do for conspiracy theories, falling down a deliriously convoluted rabbit hole of graveyard politics. Wonderfully weird. Horde is about a teenager in a foster home that reconnects with a past resident, causing repressed memories of her hoarder mother to emerge. This is a strange and kind of manic coming-of-age dealing with trauma and mental health almost whimsically, a disturbing but compelling and sometimes charming watch. Time Stalker follows a woman that keeps getting reincarnated every time she dies because of falling in love with the same man. So many wonderful subversions of romantic tropes and some delightful comedy moments and a bit of gore thrown in for good measure. It's great fun. Who by Fire is an awkward dinner party / coming-of-age cabin-in-the-woods drama where a school friend is invited to join a family on a road trip to the wilderness where the father's old work colleague is working on a documentary film. There are 3 separate awkward dinner table scenes that all just play out in one long single take, and they are all wonderfully agonizing to watch. Very real and filled with petty jealousy and resentments. Great performances and amazing scenery too, but also super long. On Becoming a Guinea Fowl is the follow-up to the great I Am Not a Witch, where a young Zambian woman comes across the dead body of her uncle in the middle of a road, leading to a close-up look at the strange and often infuriating process of a Zambian funeral, as dark family secrets are surfaced. A slow but effective burn with heavy focus on some dark, systematic issues in the country. Animale is hard to talk about because it's best to go into blind. It's about a young woman working on a bull farm that wants to be a bull runner in a very male-dominated industry. The journey of figuring out what the film was made for a great watch. Super dark, pretty gory and emotional. It's a simple idea done really well. You may need to balance your need for trigger warnings with spoilers for this one. Memoir of a Snail is Adam Elliott's long-awaited follow-up to Mary and Max, a sepia-tinged melancholic tale. This time it's about twin siblings' journeys through some harsh life lessons across the Australian continent. Lovingly crafted, darkly wistful episodic narratives with a delightful aesthetic mixed in with vibes full of misery that tend to balance themselves out nicely. Misericordia is a dark drama thriller where a man returning to his childhood village for a funeral gets caught up in previous sexual desires and in turn embroiled in others, leading to some dire and weirdly amusing situations and murder. This one is a doozy. It's good fun. Green Border looks at the strange and deadly limbo refugees face trying to cross the border between Belarus and Poland, from the point of view of the asylum seekers, the border patrol guards, and various activists trying to help. It's a grim situation filled with human rights violations, but the way the multiple narrative threads are woven through keep it engaging through the long run time. A Different Man is a wonderful black comedy about an aspiring actor with a disfigured face who struggles with self-identity and begins a radical treatment to turn him into a different man, and then things escalate from there. It's kooky and dark with a great sly sense of humour. Dee Dee is a coming-of-age story of a Chinese-American boy in 2008. I am not ready for 2008 to be nostalgia bait. At times, it's pretty brutal, but it's also very funny and full of heart. Cuckoo is a kooky horror where a teenager travels to a resort in the German Alps with her father and his new family, and weird things are going on there. Not hard to guess the themes with a title like that, and it's surprisingly on the nose with this mystery. It felt like if Dario Argento directed A Cure for Wellness. Can't even Dan Stevens. Oddity is creepy. How is it so creepy? It has no right to be that creepy, but it's bloody creepy, you guys. Creepy. Thelma is a 93-year-old grandma that gets tricked out of money by an online scam and sets out on a quest to get it back. It's the slowest Mission Impossible you've ever seen, completely hilarious and totally heartwarming. My Old Ass is a magical realism coming-of-age story where a girl on her 18th birthday trips out on mushrooms and sees a vision of her 39-year-old self that warns her not to fall in love with a certain boy, a boy that she then meets the next day. It's utterly delightful, super bittersweet, and very, very charming. The Substance is ironically more style than substance. It's very, very obvious and bold with its theming, but that style is so outrageous that I don't care. It's like a French extremity version of Death Becomes Her, or David Cronenberg making a modern Dorian Gray. It never fails to escalate, and that's impressive for a film that's over 2 hours long, because it goes way beyond expectations, and that delights me to no end. Definitely one to see on the big screen with a crowd. And that's everything. Thanks for watching.